Hi there, I'm Keith and welcome to the CTS CSE 289 Capstone Project covering the CTS or Computer Information Technology courses. This video series will cover topics from the CTS 220 course, Advanced Hardware Software Support, provided by Durham Technical Community College. This is video 1 of a 3-part tutorial series that will be focused on selecting the appropriate hardware to meet your specific needs. This tutorial is designed to help users select the right hardware for their personal computer when they're buying one. Today we will cover 4 major hardware components needed for your computer to function properly. These topics will include the CPU, the RAM, the motherboard, and your data storage. Okay, so starting with what is known as the brain of the PC, CPU stands for Central Processing Unit. The CPU is responsible for so many things within the computer I would need all day to explain it. So for now, I'm just going to briefly describe what its functions are and skip the mathematics and logic behind its design. The CPU is your computer's main component. Without the PC, your computer would not function at all. The CPU is responsible for processing all your computer's applications, the commands, handling input and output functions, things like that. The CPU is used when you boot your computer and when you want to run an application. The CPU works with other parts of your computer to complete specific tasks. Each CPU is rated differently by its speed, measured in hertz. CPUs range in a speed starting as low as 2 gigahertz, giga meaning billions, and hertz meaning cycles per second. CPUs have multiple cores, which allow for more processing power and the ability to run more applications at once. It is the most expensive piece of hardware inside of your computer, and it's located on the motherboard, which we will get to later in this video. So if you're building your own computer and are at the point where you need to select a CPU, you need to ask yourself, how much computing power will I need? And am I compiling a ton of code for a program? Am I going to be running a graphic-heavy machine? Or am I just looking for something to process word processing? But chances are, if you're building a PC from scratch, you're going to want some quality hardware that will perform the way you want it. Next we have RAM, which stands for Random Access Memory. RAM is stored on a chip like the one you see below and is mounted in a specific slot on the motherboard, which I promise we will cover next. Okay, so RAM is memory that allows you to store data temporarily. You can think of it as a small hard drive, but it isn't a hard drive because it doesn't store programs or applications, just the data the program needs in order to run. Another way to describe it would be that it stores your open tasks. Unlike a hard drive, the data is volatile, meaning that when you turn your computer off, the data will be lost and cleared from the RAM. Selecting the amount of RAM can be a bit confusing at first, but it's actually pretty easy. The standard today is about 4 gigs, but you can go much higher than that if you have the slots for it. It's not uncommon to see PCs outfitted with 16 gigs or higher of RAM. You will see a noticeable difference in performance if you have a lot of RAM. When building a computer, a lot of people will purchase a lot of RAM. I know I did, in order to future-proof their computers, so that when there is a new operating system or an application that requires just 8 gigs to function, the PC will be able to handle it. But if you're not planning on intense gaming, video editing, 16 gigs might be a little overkill. But on the other hand, I know some programmers who have at least 32 gigs of RAM just to cut down their compile time. So it's important to know ahead of time what you're going to be doing with your computer so you can prepare appropriately. Next we have our motherboard. You've heard me mention this word before but may not know what it is. Well, I'll tell you. The motherboard is the big computer chip that you find inside of your computer. It's what ties all your components together neatly in one space. It is the foundation on which your computer is built on. So, when selecting a motherboard, it's important to ask yourself a series of questions. Form factor, which determines its size and its features that makes it compatible with power supplies, cases, expansion cards for RAM. Covering every detail of a motherboard would take a while, so I'll just ask you a few questions you should ask yourself when selecting a motherboard. What form factor does your motherboard use? Does it support the type of processor you want to buy? What chipset does it use? How many expansion slots are there for RAM and graphic audio cards? what type of BIOS did the motherboard use, and how much support does the manufacturer supply for it? Whoa, that's a lot of questions. Well, it may be a little overwhelming, but these are important questions to ask and will save you a potential headache in the future. Okay, on to our final topic of this video, the hard drive. The hard drive is responsible for data storage. Data stored on a hard drive is considered non-volatile, meaning it remains in storage even after you shut your PC down. The hard drive, like other components I discussed, is connected to the motherboard. Okay, so you have a couple of options to choose from here. The traditional hard drive, which uses magnetic rotating disks to store the data, and then you have your solid-state drives that are much faster at data retrieval but much more expensive. That data is stored on microchips using flash memory. If you're looking for speed, I would go for the solid-state drive, honestly. Since there are no disks in a solid-state drive, accessing the data is much faster. Booting your operating system will be lightning fast compared to booting from a traditional drive. So, not to mention the solid states are physically superior to conventional hard drives in that there are no moving parts. They're less sensitive to shock, vibrations, and things like magnetic fields. So you may be thinking, well, solid-state drive seems like the way to go. Well, it could be, but something to consider is how much data you're planning to store. If you have terabytes of data, then I would suggest looking into getting a disk drive or even multiple disk drives and set up a redundancy configuration to keep all that data safe. As of now, solid-state drives typically max out at about 500 gigs or so, which is a lot, but there are disk drives out there that can hold more than 3 terabytes of data, which is a lot of data. So, if you have an extensive library of music and videos, I would go with a larger disk drive, and by large, I mean its capacity. But if you're into high performance, gaming, or whatever, then a solid state might be your best bet. There are even some PCs out that will allow you to have both, which can be very beneficial in whatever you're using your PC for. Okay, so that concludes my discussion with selecting appropriate hardware to meet your specific needs. There are a few other components I want to discuss, but I'm short in time. Thank you for listening. In my next video, I'll be discussing printer functions and troubleshooting. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.